When you are of mixed origins, where do you belong?
My Croatian grandmother came to Canada literally with no shoes after World War II and being in a coma and built an empire. I had a lady recently who is Croatian, and I had said something and she said, well, you wouldn't really know because you weren't born and raised there. You just go on vacation and you just do cultural things in your country. And it was so demeaning. I think that a lot of that leads into a feeling that you don't belong, which is a feeling of low self-esteem, of low self-worth.
When you are of mixed origins, where do you belong? That's a good question, right? Hello, Natasha. How are you doing?
Hi, Darine. Bonjour.
Bonjour,
Kifik, salam.
One of the benefits of being of mixed origins is oftentimes we speak multiple languages, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
which can be an asset. So let's start with the beginning, your childhood.
Okay.
Did you have any inspirational figures? Who were your role models throughout your journey and how did they influence you to become the leader you are meant to be?
I would say, of course, my parents, my mother mainly, my grandmother, on my Croatian side, as well as my Lebanese side, they were both working women. Not to say that work is what makes them inspirational, but I think their determination in a time when that wasn't exactly something that they were supposed to do. My Croatian grandmother came to Canada literally with no shoes after World War II and being in a coma and built an empire. She was a hairdresser and did real estate, which is unbelievable. Not formal real estate, but rental properties. And my Lebanese grandmother worked for the first phone company in Lebanon. She was a manager, which is so interesting because that wasn't really the job that, a lot of women were to do in their time. And they were both very entrepreneurial and both very elegant. And I think that's something that a lot of women today lose when they start to get into what you would call as more traditionally masculine roles. And I really take that from them, is that even though like 2 days ago I was painting a fence, you know, I still have my jewelry on and I still try to do my hair. And you still, because it's hard. It's often really hard to take care of yourself, when you're juggling so many things. And I think I learned that from them as well as my own mother.
That's such inspiring stories. Your grandma coming to Canada without shoes and building an empire.
Yes, I actually have the same business as her. Except that I'm not a hairdresser, even though I wanted to study cosmetology, but my parents really pushed me towards education. I have basically the same life as her. I have the same personality too. It's so interesting, like
So this is the legacy she built.
I grew up, by the time I was born and came along, like they had already sold most of everything. But you grew up hearing these stories, and then I just went for it myself. And I have a lot of the same personality as her too.
Love it. So if I were to ask your loved ones 3 words to describe yourself, what would that be?
Courageous,
Mm-hmm.
brave, and outgoing.
Outgoing and
Yeah,
brave.
I'm really outgoing. I'm not, even if the entire room does not like me, I'm still going to show up. I'm still coming. I'm still going to show up. I'm still going to be there. It doesn't matter, outgoing that way. And I'll try new things, sometimes for my detriment, but I will put myself in the
Out
frying
there.
pan if I have to. Yeah, I will. Absolutely.
And what do you say sometimes to your detriment?
Well, sometimes there are some things that I should probably do more homework in,
Mm-hmm.
do a little more research, and I don't, because I don't know. I sometimes find paperwork boring. So I leave it to the people I hire to do. And thank God
Of
they're
course.
wonderful, and they do the best work for me. They're wonderful and they do great work. And I'm thankful for that because, I often don't read all the fine print.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I can plead guilty of not reading the fine print.
Recently bought a house. I bought another property to it's part of our investments, and somebody asked me how many bedrooms are there, and I was like, "Oh, I don't actually know." Because I bought the property, the price was so good, and the realtor, they're part of the circle. And the realtor was like, "Natasha, I saved this one for you because when it goes to market, it's going to go up at 65,000. You want it, yes or no?" So I just said yes. I didn't even know. I don't even know how many bedrooms or bathrooms or whatever, but I
Amazing.
know, like, I know the overall general picture of the market, and the ROI and all of that. But those fine details, I sometimes miss them.
That's okay. Listen, if it works for you, as long as it works for you, that's good. So, you said that your greatest achievement is your Stanford fellowship, where you were
Yeah.
able to speak to an issue affecting women in
Yeah.
Lebanon, right? So you were
Yes.
able to speak on this issue, not only that affects women in the diaspora, but women in Lebanon directly, and how it impacts their lives and their children's lives. So tell us a little bit more about that fellowship and the impact you had on the women and children in Lebanon.
Um, so I am a CCDRL Stanford Fellow, and that's a fellowship on democracy and law and process of law. And Lebanon is one of 27 countries in the world that does not grant women who are not married to Lebanese nationals, does not grant them citizenship to their children or to their spouse.
Wow.
So I am an advocate for this law to be changed or rearranged, or have a red circle or a policy that, at the bare minimum, we should be able to transfer citizenship to our children. With more than 40 million Lebanese, identified Lebanese, living outside of Lebanon,
Mm-hmm.
this is a soft ethnic cleansing, because when you're living outside, as we spoke earlier, outside of the country, it's very unlikely that you're going to marry someone from the same country as you, because you're
Yeah.
exposed to so many different people and life just happens. I mean, yes, it would be great. That would be lovely. But sure, it may not happen, and it's not a given that it's going to happen. So, at the minimum, we should be able to give our children citizenship. We don't necessarily have to give them voting rights because they're not living there, but we should at least be able to give them citizenship, to at least open them up to other opportunities that might be available, such as study, such as property, real estate, inheritance, and so forth. Because the waters get really muddy even when you are a child of someone who's a citizen of a different country and they leave you real estate. I think we can, all of us who are immigrant kids, can speak to how muddy and ugly the waters become when you're
Mm-hmm.
not a national.
Yeah.
So I believe that there's a way to change this, and I advocate for that.
Oh, that's great. So you are an impact leader, right? You are making an impact. You are speaking up. You are changing life, and you are also an award-winning Canadian for your philanthropy in community and dedication to education. Um, so you received the Stanford University Fellowship. We talked about it. You are also the recipient of the 40 and the 40 United Ways Leadership Windsor Essex Awards 2018, and much more. And still, despite all the recognition and the accolade, the one thing that no one knows about you is the feeling of low self-esteem and the lack of belonging. Tell us more a little bit about the self-esteem piece to start with.
I think that a lot of it comes from, you know, just that feeling of kind of like, where do you really belong? You know?
So it's linked.
And even say with my fellowship, when I go to speak on it, I always need to have a disclaimer that I am not indigenous to the land. I don't have to do that. I do it out of respect for women who are living in Lebanon and who have a suffering that I've never experienced in my life, because I'm living in Canada. I was born and raised in Canada. Well, I'm currently living in Kuwait, but that's still another wealthy nation. So I don't have the same background that someone would have who is indigenous to the land. And when you do that, and even when you don't do that, even when they hear me speak in Arabic, they know that I'm not from there. And so there's always that feeling that you're not really, you're kind of
Fully.
more this or that. You're not really from here. And so what do you really have to say? What do you know? I had a lady recently in a group chat who is Croatian, and I had said something, and she said, well, you wouldn't really know because you weren't born and raised there. You just go on vacation and you just do cultural things in your country. And it was so demeaning, and when someone says something like that to you, you just kind of stand still. You don't really have anything else to say. How do you follow that up?
No.
And so I think that a lot of that leads into a feeling that you don't belong, which is a feeling of low self-esteem, of low self-worth.
Yeah.
And it's not true. It's kind of like in your mind. It's kind of like in your mind because you do belong there. Who says you don't, And I've been doing a lot of work on belonging, and it's more in our minds. What other people say is their own trauma. It has nothing to do with you, and where you come from is where you come from. Where you are born is so subjective. It's like time, place, parents, immigration, et cetera, et cetera. It's so subjective. But who you are is who you are. And that's something that I had to learn. And that has taken 40 years.
Oh, listen, I'm still in the process of learning. Because, so I'm French on my mom's side and Tunisian on my father's side. And in France, I'm not French enough, and I will never be French enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe some of the recent events that had happened in France, like showcase like what happens for the people like me and the younger generation who were born in France and raised in France, but that we don't consider as fully French. But then when I would go to Tunisia, I will be the French one, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking when I moved to Canada, I was like, okay, you know what? I will be in Canada. No one will know who I am. French, not enough French, Arabic, not enough Arabic. Then I will be me, and I will be Canadian.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but you said something though. You said it's in your mind, but I would add to that it's in your heart too, because it does hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does hurt, right? And
It's I would say that it's extremely painful when people feel that that's the way that they want to speak to you. I would say it's extremely painful.
yeah.
And a term I came across is the third culture kid. So we are third culture kids.
Yeah.
Essentially, we are living in Western countries, but we're not actually Westerners. We are by birth, by passport. However, up to 15th generation in some cases, where our values, morals, and belief systems are very different than where we're being raised. So somehow we don't fully migrate into that system. We're kind of like partial migrants. And then we grow up with a different set of stories, fairy tales, nursery rhymes. And so we align to that as well. We go on holidays to different places than, say, our peers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also brought up in a very multicultural environment, which is very different than our peers. It's a very
Exactly.
different, your home, your, place intime is very different than others. So it's a very interesting dichotomy that we live in, and we are third culture kids because we might be, on our third or fourth or fifth generation. So we're just sort of this hybrid of all these cultures, and many of us also choose to live abroad or choose to go and live in the country where our parents are from. And we
Mm.
don't really belong there either because
Yeah.
they have different ways of navigating life that we're not used to because we are also from a different system. So
True.
there's a beauty in it, and there's also a malaise. There's a
Yeah.
beauty and a malaise. Yeah.
And the malaise. Yeah. I remember, it no longer happens now, which is good. But I remember, looking at people who have this strong feeling, this strong attachment, this strong sense of belonging to their culture, right? I'm based in Toronto, so when I look at the Indian community, for example, the Punjabi community, for example, just to mention them, like they have this strong, attachment to their culture and this strong sense of belonging. I'm like, it makes them happy, right? It makes them
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much happy, and I'm like, wow, I wish I could feel that strong and that happy about my heritage. But as you said, when you are of mixed origins, of course, you are pulled up, right? Either on one side or on the others, and then you live in a country that is another country, so with a different culture system and all of this. So now let's take a look. Let's take a look about your journey to becoming the leader you were meant to be, and the impact that you are having. Can you share any pivotal moments that significantly impacted your self-esteem and helped you develop a stronger sense of self-worth?
Oh,
Did you have
yeah.
like an aha moment?
Oh, my aha moment, I can tell you right now, 2014, I was on a trajectory, a different path than I am now, always in education. And there was someone that I was working with who kiboshed all of my projects and plans. And I had a huge project with the university. Like 10 years has passed now. So it's not even in the radar. Most of those people have retired. But that man, I will never forget, that man is the reason I moved to Kuwait. He kiboshed all of my projects, all of my plans, all of my ideas. I was on a straight trajectory to administration. And because of what he did, I became very sick and very ill.
Wow.
And I remember I was exercising, and I saw a show on TV about this place in the Middle East that I didn't even know existed. And these people had a boat, and they looked like they were having fun, more fun than me. So I said, I'm moving there. And then I was also doing makeup on a movie set, and I was working with a gentleman who became my mentor. And he said, the life and the lifestyle that you want to live is going to lead you to pure bankruptcy. So you need to find a way to figure this out and make more money and passive income and generational wealth. And he was just speaking the story of my childhood. So I knew already what he was saying. And I bought my first property. And again, I did it, Darine, like I didn't even have money. I borrowed the money from my mom. I borrowed it. I went to the mortgage meeting, and she was like, okay, so prime plus blah, blah, blah. And I was like, is that a stake? Like, I thought prime was a stake. I didn't even know what she was talking about. And I
Okay.
just signed on the dotted line, but it was the best decision I've ever made. I was also doing my master's back then, and I took that money because I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is my life. Somebody is going to dictate, because
Mm-hmm.
I work for someone. So they tell me what to do, even if it's part of the same enterprise and makes them look good, they can still put the lid on you when they feel like
Yeah.
it. And so I was like, I'm not doing this. So I took the money from my master's and I went and put it on a property, and it's been great ever since.
So this is, you first. I like that because I feel like it's during tough time and in adversity that you make the best decision for yourself, because you go deep, search for that strength to do things that you may have never done otherwise, right?
It isn't until your back is up against the
Yeah.
wall, until everything you thought is going to be your life comes crashing down. And that has
Yeah.
happened to me so many times. I'm like a veteran of that. I have like a PhD in picking yourself back up. That's what I have a PhD in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I can
you'll
join your
survive.
club.
You survive it, and it makes
You
you
do.
a better and a stronger person.
Yeah, I can join your club on that one too. So did you so far, like, would you say that, the way you embrace your mixed origins, and your diverse experiences, your diverse also heritage, right? We talked about your
Yes.
your family from Croatia and from Lebanon. How does it have influenced your leadership approach and the way you build connection with people?
Hmm. I think because I've always been outgoing, it's easier to talk to people. I wouldn't say 100% that I build these very big connections with everyone. I would say that I have a lot of associates and acquaintances that I work with, I collaborate with, we follow each other on socials, we promote
Mm-hmm.
each other, support each other. But true connection is only with very few. Very, very few. And that's family, friends, associates. We don't have per se any employees. I have freelancers that work for us just because of the nature of my business. And I would say there's not too many that I have a deep connection with. I have a lot of respect for everyone, regardless of what they're doing and are up to. It's not my business, but a deep connection only with very few. I would say very few. And that's just, I think, because, we're not in each other's spaces all the time. And, I have friends that are global all over the world. And of course, we follow each other on socials, try to, share and tag and like for everybody's business. However, to form a deep, lasting connection,
Yeah.
I would say only with a very handful of people. Even the
Mm-hmm.
other day, I thought, like, if I was to have, like, an event, like, how many people would I really invite? Would I really invite that I really could say, like, you've been there forever, And my communities are my communities. You know people, you share religious practice with people, you go to events, you volunteer, you support. But again, deep rooted connection is only very few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And many individuals struggle with low self-esteem and feelings of not belonging, right? So
Yeah.
in our case, for yourself and I, it's because of our mixed origins, but it can be for many other reasons, right? So what advice would you give to those who are like on a similar journey, seeking to embrace their unique identity, and find their place in the world of leadership?
I would say that every day, tell yourself 10 things that you're really great at and just count them on your fingers. 10 things that you're really good at that only you know that you can do. And that already makes you stand out from the crowd. Regardless of what is happening anywhere in the world, you were born with these beautiful cultures and traditions, and you have that to offer. And you take that with you anywhere you go, to the
Yeah.
gym, to dinner, to the boardroom, to the office. You take it with you no matter where you go. And you don't have to particularly necessarily be an active member. And maybe people look at you funny. And it happens to me all the time. But I'm running a multi-million-dollar business. I'm lucky if I'm going to have a shower today, Darine, yet alone, go and be an active. I give what I can when I can. Excuse me. So I think that It's having, excuse me, knowing that
Take your time.
you matter no matter what. And maybe you're a mom and you have 3 kids at home. Like, how are you supposed to do all these things and contribute? So no matter what people say, if you know that you're doing the right thing, you know that you're not harming others, you know that, you're providing the best that you can, what you can, your gifts, then it doesn't really
That's what
matter what other
matters.
people have to say or think. So maybe you're not French enough. Maybe you're not Algerian enough. Maybe you're not Congolese enough. Well, what is enough actually? And who defines that? We live in a global world now. People are living. I've worked and studied with people from places I didn't even know were on a map. And I'm pretty good at geography. The places I didn't even know existed. And whatever little bits they can share with me of their culture is the greatest ever, because it just awakens, you and others. So tell yourself every day, I am these 10 things, and I'm going to take these 10 things with me no matter where I go. And every day it might be something new. And regardless of who makes you feel like you don't belong, that's their insecurity, their trauma, because they're, rather than say, hey, welcome, you're welcome here, whether they like your opinion or your thought or not, because I don't agree with everyone, but that doesn't mean I can't be respectful and welcoming to others. And if they can't do that to you, then just sit by yourself. What do you care? You don't need to sit with them anyway. That's why we have cell phones. Sit on your phone and play a game. Play a crossword.
And I like what you said, actually. Who does to define, like, what does enough mean? Like, what is enough? Like, what does that mean, being enough? Like, that's a very good point, actually. I never thought about it this way. Like, you are not enough this, or you are not enough that, because you are a mixed of origin. But what do you define as enough? What does that mean? Does it even mean anything?
Who set the enough barometer? So in order to be enough of this or that, who set that standard? Like, that's what I'd like to know, is who set that standard. And the person who set that standard, let's say, hypothetically speaking, are they doing 100 every day? Because if they're not, then I'm not really interested in listening to their perception of me.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, what would make, let's say, someone Hungarian enough? You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's silly. And I've gotten it quite a bit, and that last one, that lady was really offensive for her to cross that line. And there really was no response at that moment. But I just said to myself, it's not up to her. It's not up to her.
True.
She can't decide. She doesn't decide. I was born how I was born, where I was born. So it's not up to her. Yeah. And if she feels that way, well, that's unfortunate, because, we want to welcome people. We want to welcome others. And, there's nothing that makes a culture more beautiful than to be welcoming of others.
That's very true. What is the legacy that you would like to leave behind?
Oh, well, my dream is to be able to have a change or a clause for Lebanese women, because I know the whole world knows about, my beautiful culture and heritage, and I know that. But there are a lot of women who are suffering dearly because of this law. A lot of women, and their children are suffering, and that's creating generational trauma and generational poverty and suffering. Okay, the spouse, whatever, they have their own nationality, they can get work visas and permits and so forth. But for the children, at least for their children, because you always know who your mother is, no matter what, you always know. And I know how that sounds, and I know how it'll come across. And but it's a French saying, actually. You always know who your mother is. And I hope to have that changed one day. I really hope to have the opportunity to speak more and more on this issue.
And you know, it gets back to the sense of belonging, of
Hmm.
course. And that's beautiful that you are doing this for the woman in Lebanon when actually you were not, you were born and raised in a different country, but see, this is where your heart is, right? So
Right.
who get to decide that you are not enough or that you are enough? You do what your heart tells you, commands you to do, and this is beautiful.
It doesn't even how does it affect me at the end of the day? Like, I'm Canadian, my kids will be Canadian. It doesn't affect me, truthfully, but I believe so strongly that in order to make a change, you have to help those who are in
Mm-hmm.
need. And I only hope that one day that can be a change. And it's something I'm passionate about because it's also maybe selfishly motivated because that could be my fate. That's my sister's fate. So many girls I know that I grew up with, that's their fate, you know?
Yeah.
And so it is something that is, and that can, and hopefully one day, maybe not in my lifetime, but needs to be changed. Yeah, it just needs to be changed. I don't think there's even an argument around it. I believe it's human rights, but it just needs to be changed.
Thank you so much for that great conversation, Natasha. That was a lovely
Anytime.
conversation. And you know, talking about, so for those of you listening, watching the live, the replay, if you feel like low, you have a low self-esteem, or you feel like you don't belong, listen, re-listen, and re-listen to this conversation, because it's going to give you the boost, you know, that you need to feel like you get to decide who you are, no matter what people say, no matter what people think. You are the one in control, and you are who you decide to be. That's it. That's all. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Daddy.